Hello, everyone. We're going to pick back up with the Book of Mormon, where we left off in the middle of the testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. I've got a little popcorn here. So for me, Munson, well, what I'm up to. It's my breakfast. Anyways, also that he also said the fullness of the everlasting gospel is contained in it, as delivered by the Savior to the ancient inhabitants. Also, that there were 2 stones and silver bows, and these stones fastened to a breastplate constituted what is called the Urim and Thummim, deposited with the plates, and the possession and use of these stones were what constituted seers in ancient or former times, and that God had prepared them for the purpose of translating the book. Again, he told me that when I got those plates of which he had spoken, for the time that they should be obtained was not yet fulfilled, I should not show them to any person, neither the breastplate with the Urim and Thummim, only to those to whom I should be commanded to show them. If I did, I should be destroyed. While he was conversing with me about the plates, the vision was opened to my mind, that I could see the place where the plates were deposited, and that so clearly and distinctly that I knew the place again when I visited it. After this communication, I saw the light in the room begin to gather immediately around the person of him who had been speaking to me, and it continued to do so until the room was again left dark, except just around him, when instantly I saw, as it were, a conduit open right up into heaven, and he ascended till he entirely disappeared, and the room was left as it had been before this heavenly light had made its appearance. I really love this testimony so much, and it really helps me kind of evaluate the authenticity of like would Joseph Smith make this up or not? And it as I read this and other things he says, it's like, okay, there's too much consistency here for it to sound like he's like actively trying to lie or something like that. I lay musing on the singularity of the scene and marveling greatly at what had been told to me by this extraordinary messenger, when, in the midst of my meditation, I suddenly discovered that my room was again beginning to get lighted, and in an instant, as it were, the same heavenly messenger was again by my bedside. He commenced, and again related the very same things which he had done at his first visit, without the least variation, which, having done, he informed me of great judgments which were coming upon the earth, with great desolations by famine, sword, and pestilence, and that these grievous judgments would come on the earth in this generation. Having related these things, he again ascended as he had done before. And so I think of World War II. I think of how before the second coming, there'll be wars and rumors of wars. By this time, so deep were the impressions made on my mind that sleep had fled from my eyes, and I lay overwhelmed in astonishment at what I had both seen and heard. But what was my surprise when again I beheld the same messenger at my bedside, and heard him rehearse or repeat over again to me the same things as before, and added a caution to me, telling me that Satan would try to tempt me, in consequence of the indigent circumstances of my father's family, to get the plates for the purpose of getting rich. This he forbade me, saying that I must have no other object in view in getting the plates but to glorify God, and must not be influenced by any other motive than that of building his kingdom, otherwise I could not get them. I've been excessively proud in parts of my life, and one way that I've come to not do that so much is just to give the glory to God. If someone gives me a very big compliment or something, I say, well, it's because of God, and then it's a grateful blessing that I've received from him, rather than anything of my own, because if I get too much of a big head, I do stupid stuff. So after this third visit, he again ascended into heaven as before, and I was again left to ponder on the strangeness of what I had just experienced, when almost immediately after the heavenly messenger had ascended from me for the third time, the cock crowed, and I found that day was approaching, so that our interviews must have occupied the whole of that night. I shortly after arose from my bed, and as usual, went to the necessary labors of the day. But in attempting to work as at other times, I found my strength so exhausted as to render me entirely unable. My father, who was laboring alongside me, discovered something to be wrong with me, and he told me to go home. I started with the intention of going to the house, but in attempting to cross the fence out of the field where we were, my strength entirely failed me, and I fell helpless on the ground, and for a time was quite unconscious of anything. The first thing that I can recollect was a voice speaking unto me, calling me by name. I looked up and beheld the same messenger standing over my head, surrounded by light as before. He then again related unto me all that he had related to me the previous night, and commanded me to go to my father and tell him of the vision and commandments which I had received. I obeyed. I returned to my father in the field, and rehearsed the whole matter to him. He replied to me that it was of God, and told me to go and do as commanded by the messenger. I left the field and went to the place where the messenger had told me the plates were deposited, and owing to the distinctness of the vision which I had had concerning it, I knew the place the instant that I arrived there. Convenient to the village of Manchester, Ontario County, New York, stands a hill of considerable size, and the most elevated of any in the neighborhood. On the west side of this hill, not far from the top, under a stone of considerable size, lay the plates, deposited in a stone box. This stone was thick and rounding in the middle, on the upper side, and thinner towards the edges, so that the middle part of it was visible above the ground, but the edge all around was covered with earth. Having removed the earth, I obtained a lever, which I got fixed under the edge of the stone, and with little exertion raised it up. I looked in, and there indeed I did behold the plates, the Urim and Thummim, and the breastplate, as stated by the messenger. The box in which they lay was formed by laying stones together in some kind of cement. In the bottom of the box were laid 2 stones crossways of the box, and on these stones lay the plates and the other things with them. I made an attempt to take them out, but was forbidden by the messenger, and was again informed that the time for bringing them forth had not yet arrived, neither would it until 4 years from that time. But he told me that I should come to that place precisely in 1 year from that time, and that he would there meet with me, and that I should continue to do so until the time should come for obtaining the plates. Accordingly as I had been commanded, I went at the end of each year, and at each time I found the same messenger there, and received instruction and intelligence from him at each of our interviews, respecting what the Lord was going to do, and how and in what manner his kingdom was to be conducted in the last days. At length the time arrived for obtaining the plates, the Urim and Thummim, and the breastplate. On the 22nd day of September, 1827, having gone as usual at the end of another year to the place where they were deposited, the same heavenly messenger delivered them up to me with this charge, that I should be responsible for them, that if I should let them go carelessly, or through any neglect of mine, I should be cut off, but that if I would use all my endeavors to preserve them until he, the messenger, should call for them, they should be protected. I soon found out the reason why I had received such strict charges to keep them safe, and why it was that the messenger had said that when I had done what was required at my hand, he would call for them. For no sooner was it known that I had them than the most strenuous exertions were used to get them from me. Every stratagem that could be invented was resorted to for that purpose. The persecution became more bitter and severe than before, and multitudes were on the alert continually to get them from me if possible. But by the wisdom of God, they remained safe in my hands, until I had accomplished by them what was required at my hand. When according to arrangements the messenger called for them, I delivered them up to him, and he has them in his charge until this day, being the 2nd day of May, 1838. For a more complete account, see Joseph Smith History in the Pearl of Great Price. The ancient record thus brought forth from the earth as the voice of a people speaking from the dust, and translated into modern speech by the gift and power of God as attested by divine affirmation, was first published to the world in the year 1830 as the Book of Mormon. A brief explanation about the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is a sacred record of peoples in ancient America and was engraved upon metal plates. Sources from which this record was compiled include the following. Firstly, the plates of Nephi, which were of two kinds, the small plates and the large plates. The former were more particularly devoted to spiritual matters and the ministry and teachings of the prophets, while the latter were occupied mostly by a secular history of the peoples concerned from the time of Mosiah. 1 Nephi 9, 2-4. From the time of Mosiah, however, the large plates also included items of major spiritual importance. That's interesting. That kind of reminds me of how I've heard the Old Testament talked about, with kind of it being spiritual first and then kind of historical after that. Secondly, the plates of Mormon, which consist of an abridgment by Mormon from the large plates of Nephi, with many commentaries. These plates also contained a continuation of the history by Mormon and additions by his son Moroni. Thirdly, the plates of Ether, which present a history of the Jaredites. This record was abridged by Moroni, who inserted comments of his own and incorporated the record with the general history under the title Book of Ether. And fourthly, the plates of brass brought by the people of Lehi from Jerusalem in 600 BC. These contained the 5 books of Moses and also a record of the Jews from the beginning, down to the commencement of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, and also the prophecies of the holy prophets. 1 Nephi 5:11-13. Many quotations from these plates, citing Isaiah and other biblical and non-biblical prophets, appear in the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon comprises 15 main parts, or divisions, known, with one exception, as books, usually designated by the name of their principal author. The first portion, the first 6 books, ending with Omni, is a translation from the small plates of Nephi. Between the books of Omni and Mosiah is an insert called the Words of Mormon. This insert connects the record engraved on the small plates with Mormon's abridgment of the large plates. The longest portion from Mosiah through Mormon chapter 7 is a translation of Mormon's abridgment of the large plates of Nephi. The concluding portion from Mormon chapter 8 to the end of the volume was engraved by Mormon's son Moroni, who, after finishing the record of his father's life, made an abridgment of the Jaredite record as the Book of Ether, and later added the parts known as the Book of Moroni. In or about the year AD 421, Moroni, the last of the Nephite prophet historians, sealed the sacred record and hid it up unto the Lord, to be brought forth in the latter days, as predicted by the voice of God through his ancient prophets. In AD 1823, this same Moroni, then a resurrected personage, visited the prophet Joseph Smith, and subsequently delivered the engraved plates to him. About this edition. The original title page immediately preceded the contents. The contents page. It is taken from the plates and is part of the sacred text. Introductions in a non-italic typeface, which obviously you can't see, but for each chapter, are. Okay. There's non-italic ones, and there are italics ones, and those were added later. Some minor errors in the text have been perpetuated in the past editions of the Book of Mormon. This edition contains corrections that seem appropriate to bring the material into conformity with pre-publication manuscripts and early editions edited by the prophet Joseph Smith. All right, so, and just to kind of, the year it's February of 2026, and I'm just reading from the Gospel Library app. So this is pretty much the most current edition that's published and printed by the church at this time, accepting the fact that in the Book of Mormon app there's a different introduction. Let's read the first book of Nephi. His reign and ministry. An account of Lehi and his wife Sariah and his 4 sons, being called, beginning at the eldest, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and Nephi. The Lord warns Lehi to depart out of the land of Jerusalem, because he prophesieth unto the people concerning their iniquity, and they seek to destroy his life. He taketh 3 days' journey into the wilderness with his family. Nephi taketh his brethren, and returneth to the land of Jerusalem, after the record of the Jews, the account of their sufferings. They take the daughters of Ishmael to wife. They take their families and depart into the wilderness. Their sufferings and afflictions in the wilderness, the course of their travels. They come to large waters. Nephi's brethren rebel against him. He confoundeth them, and buildeth a ship. They call the name of the place Bountiful. They cross the large waters into the promised land, and so forth. This is according to the account of Nephi, or in other words, I, Nephi, wrote this record. Okay, I suppose I will actually stop there. Nice little cliffhanger for the entire, that's basically the entire book of Nephi. And then we'll jump into chapter 1 next time. Thanks for listening. As I've read the Book of Mormon, it's really strengthened my knowledge and understanding of the mind and heart of God. And it's helped me to live righteously and holy, and to have virtue and charity. And I'm excited to be sharing it with you. And maybe it's my ADHD, but I love the audio recording that the church has, but it is very bland, and I understand the importance of a kind of very emotional, acted, passionate, which, in my Sonoma County, California, is kind of how this area I grew up in is, how that can help people pay attention and know which parts are most meaningful and what they mean, to kind of have that, in a way it's commentary, because it's interpretation, because it's attaching, certain emphasis to certain words in the accent, or the volume, or the pitch, and also certain emotions with certain words. And so it can reveal very much, I guess, a person's interpretation. And so you kind of get to see my understanding of these words and what they mean, just through how I talk about it. And so that's really cool. Oakley dokley doo. I'll see you on the next video.